Hello, Revere, and welcome to our Revere Veterans and Community Show. Today we have a real special guest. For you people who don't know him, he used to be a former councillor. His name is George Rotondo. But
Morris.
you are running for Councillor-at-large again?
I am, sir.
Right? And first of all, let me tell you, thank you to take the time off because you are a nurse at the Women's and Brigham Hospital.
Brigham and Women's Hospital.
Tell us something about that, George.
Well, it's kind of funny. I used to work as a truck driver for St. Johnsbury Trucking, and the company folded, and I found myself in the middle of an economy and where I had to re-educate myself. And during the time that I was working as a truck driver, I would pull over and help people, and the state troopers would tell me, geez, you should be an EMT. Sure enough, I did that, and then eventually the nurses in the emergency room would say, you should be a nurse. Subsequently, I became a nurse. And quite frankly, it's something that I find more as a calling than a vocation. It's been the most rewarding thing that I've ever had in my entire life, to be quite honest with you.
And you've been there almost 20 years.
That's true. And I thought this phone was off, and I apologize, so we're going to shut it off.
That's all right.
Isn't it? You know, you think about it in this day and age, you know, the phones, everybody has them on, and you think that you have them off, and you don't. So I apologize to the people as well as to you.
As long as they don't know what we're talking about, that's the best part.
Well, we can always speak in German, can't we now?
Jawohl. Okay, I'll leave you with that. By the way, I got to ask you a couple of questions. You've been there 20 years at the Women's and Brigham Hospital, and you are a staff?
I'm a staff nurse on the cardiothoracic intensive care nurse. We predominantly care for patients that require heart surgery, those that need transplants as well as artificial hearts. We do everything from providing advanced life support, such as providing extracorporeal membrane oxygenators, or ECMO, as well as dialysis and so forth. It's truly one of the most sophisticated types of medicine that you can get into.
Right, but you know, I go by Women's when I used to go to the VA, Jamaica Plain, which is not far from the Women's and Brigham. It says Women's and Brigham, but that don't mean it's only for women.
No, Brigham and Women's Hospital is basically a level 1 trauma center, has almost 1,000 beds. It's the sister hospital to Mass General in the overall umbrella of Partners Healthcare. And quite frankly, they've given me a superb education. I couldn't ask to work for a better institution, or for that matter, a nicer bunch of people.
Now let me ask you this. You see a lot of people on drugs going to the hospital?
Well, you know, before I did, and quite frankly, even as a civilian, you know, driving around Revere, I've seen it, and unfortunately I've seen it in Revere with my children. And to be quite honest with you, addictions actually affected my family greatly.
Before we get into that, I got to ask you, what is the biggest problem facing our children today?
Well, I think, to be quite honest with you, our children in Revere, when we look at the statistics at this point, one of the things that I think children are facing is what we're talking about right now, is addiction. And you know, the sad part is that Revere is 7th right now in the state in the terms of overdose on opiates. And that's a very, very...
What's the most common drugs, if I may ask?
Heroin, because it's the cheapest. And, you know, that's a very, very, you know, big problem.
I had a drug problem too, George. I couldn't afford it. I thought you'd like that little
That's
tidbit.
a good one. That is a good one.
I had to throw that in there. But let me tell you, with all kidding aside, drug is a very serious problem because I read in the papers, I see it on TV, overdoses, and sometimes it's deadly.
Well, I mean, it's clearly deadly. I mean, in Revere alone in 2014 and 13, there were 16 deaths. I believe in 2012 there have been 11.
In Revere?
In Revere, due to drug overdoses, that's right. And the numbers are not in right yet to Department of Public Health from the City of Revere at this point. And it's pretty much gathered by zip code from all the institutions that take care of patients from the city.
Then how come some states legalize the drug problem? There is a problem.
Well, as you know, part of the issue, and as we were speaking earlier, is why does this happen? Is because of gateway drugs. And one of the things that I wanted to speak about was, I can honestly tell you, I do not agree with the legalization of marijuana.
Neither do I. I'll be honest with you. I don't agree with it either.
There's a drug that we use in the hospital. I've worked in bone marrow transplant in my lifetime. I've done, I've given chemotherapy to patients and so forth. And we can treat them with a whole slew of medications. And then there are some people who normally don't respond appropriately to all the antiemetics, and Marinol or marijuana does work for them. So I do believe that there is a need for it at that point. Glaucoma and so many other,
George, can I ask you a personal question
as
that
much
pertains
as,
to me?
Yes, of course.
As a cancer patient, I went to the VA hospital in Jamaica Plain.
Sure.
And the doctor asked me one time, he said, would you like to take this medication, which was actually drugs,
Okay.
or hormone treatment, which I never knew that he told me it's a little
Was
pellet.
it for prostate cancer?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a little pellet, BB pellet, like
Sure.
they shoot it into you. I
Sure.
took the latter rather than try to get addiction on drugs.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't they just do that all the time?
Well, to be quite honest with you, not everybody falls into that category. Some people can respond to that, other people can't. And I'm not speaking as an expert, I'm speaking as to my experience. You can give one person, Toradol, which is a strong type of Motrin, so to speak, and it will work for them, but it has an effect on their kidneys. And they might not be able to take it for a long time, so then you have to switch to a narcotic like oxycodone, like Vicodin, where they might need it. But the issue is about long-term treatment of pain and chronic pain and things of that nature. You kind of get into a dicey area, and then you get into the area of when you have them in your house, your children getting into them, and that's a very dangerous issue.
The first drug they gave me was called biacalamide, if I pronounce
We spoke about that, yes.
Yep. And the doctor told me to follow the directions exactly the way it's written, because every drug could be deadly, and if you don't follow the directions, even that drug could kill you. So I'm not talking about taking a load of drugs. Timing. In other words, take it every morning
Sure.
at 7 or 8.
Sure. I mean, that's the purpose, right route, right drug, right time. And, the other issue is people don't realize is that there are a lot of drugs, over-the-counter drugs, that can have very deleterious effects to you. I mean, these things happen, they're part of the numbers.
Here's a question I got to throw at you. Let's say you and I both have the same problem, prostate
Sure.
cancer, for example.
Sure.
The drug that's good for me may not be good for you.
That's true, because body chemistry is different. And that goes with, if you look at mental health issues, some people can take certain medications to help them with their mental health issues, and others can't. Same thing with people who have cardiac disease. I might be able to give you amiodarone, or say your doctor, for example,
Right.
might be able to give you amiodarone for ventricular tachycardia or atrial fibrillation, whereas somebody else might not tolerate that, and they might have to go on something different altogether. Same thing with Coumadin, same thing with aspirin. Everybody's unique in their own right.
I want you to really, explain to us how bad is the issue of the drug abuse in Revere? Really, how bad is it?
Like I said, the Globe reported that we were 7th in the...
The Globe newspaper?
The Globe reported that, yeah. It's affecting our young kids, not only in high school, but in junior high. My daughter says she smelled people smoke pot, when she was going to school. She's down at the Garfield School. And I'm not saying it's happening in the school, but she's telling me she smells it. And, I think where you have young adults and children, being bombarded both in social media and...
But some of that comes from the parents, George. They see the parents using drugs, they think it's okay for me to use it.
There's no question about that. I mean, there is a unique property in which parents play a role. But again, I mean, combine that with the issues of social media and society and pop culture, these things all come to fruition to create problems within our children.
Now I got to ask you, how did this condition happen? I mean, how does it go from A to Z?
Well, the funny part is I don't believe that there's any one unique circumstance, but many of the experts point to how 15 years ago there was issues of children being addicted to parents' medications or medications that they were given in order to treat various illnesses, or for that matter, if you broke your arm, you would get treated. I can tell you an example from my cousin. Both my cousins are addicts, one of them who had died, unfortunately, God rest her soul.
How old was it, if I may ask?
She was 28,
That's young.
and my other cousin, he's in his 30s, and he still struggles with it.
Is that a drug problem?
Yeah, and this is a kid who went to Miami, was looked at by the Marlins, blew out his knee, and ended up going on drugs. to take away the pain, and subsequently ended up going to heroin. He's been incarcerated. He's been in drug treatment. His mother, died of a heroin overdose in my arms in her house in Everett. So this really affects me. It's also part of the reason why I supported Gene Doherty, and the City Council supported him in obtaining Narcan for the people of Revere. And it was, I believe, and he can correct me, of course, and to his credit, that this was the first city in the United States to actually use nasal Narcan. It is a lifesaver. I mean, I pulled off some statistics or some actual information that...
First of all, tell me exactly, because I'm a layman, so tell me exactly what nasal...
Well, so Narcan is naloxone, and what it is an antidote to someone who takes heroin. So if you were to overdose on heroin, or if you were to overdose on Percocets or an opiate type drug, Narcan will reverse it. So what these drugs do is they suppress your respiration. And the path, the way that this works is when your body stops breathing, your heart rate slows down, and then you basically pass.
Does that mean that when a person goes into rehab, he gets that drug?
No, not necessarily. Sometimes they can go on something called Suboxone, which has a different effect on the body, and then sometimes they go on methadone, which is a different type of drug as well.
And who organizes that? The doctors?
The doctors generally prescribe that, but I want to give the Revere Fire Department some great credit because in the last 14 months, they have had over 137 saves in the city of Revere. Yep.
The Revere Fire?
Yes, sir. And I was getting that off, I believe, the Revere Journal. So my information might be a little outdated, but 137 lives. You probably know somebody that had a family member who was saved from that drug. This is phenomenal. Unfortunately, they had... by this time, 6 deaths, 69 overdoses in which Narcan wasn't used, and additionally, 57 of these people during this time were actually reversed. So, I mean, this is a huge life-saving mechanism for the people of Revere. And the other thing is Captain Jay Piccarello, he's on YouTube, and the Revere Fire Department talks about the uniqueness and utilization of Narcan and how it saves people's lives. And I implore everybody to do it. And to be quite honest with you, go on YouTube and seek this out from the Revere Fire Department, because it's a great tool to learn from.
I'm going to be the first one to look on YouTube when we leave here.
Well, you were downloading doo-wops when we got in.
Yeah, but that's music. But that's an addiction too, but that's a good addiction.
That's true.
Okay, I mean, there is good addiction and there's bad addiction.
No question about it. And you know something, we're very lucky. We have someone like Kim Hatton, Revere native,
right.
Very, very intelligent, an expert at what she does over at the North Suffolk Mental Health Association. So if people want to get treatment, if someone in your family wants to get treatment, if you need help, you yourself, call North Suffolk Mental Health. Their number is 781-289-9331, or call the Bureau of Substance Abuse at the Department of Public Health so they can help you at 617-624-5111. This is so important for people.
I got to tell you, as you sow, so shall you reap. And do the schools start the kids off at an early age and tell them what is good and what is bad for them on this?
I can tell you that the Revere Public Schools are excellent at providing our children with education in the sense of what not to do, how to protect themselves. Mr. D does a phenomenal job at providing children information, as well as other teachers. And I don't think it just is one person. This is something that I see in the school system as being every teacher's, not job, but this is everything that they do. I haven't met a single teacher in our school system with 2 girls in it that do not take pride in their job, or for that matter, really don't take an interest in our kids. So yeah, this is something that goes top to bottom.
I was just wondering, that's in the state because the drug is not legalized, but if you're in a state where drug is legal, the teachers can't do anything about that then, because they'd be just breaking the law in the opposite direction.
I'll leave that up to the legislature. Personally, I don't agree with it.
Who passes the laws? Is it local towns or the state?
The state voted on it. The people voted for this. So, this is on ourselves. And sometimes, when you do things of this nature, you take a step back and see, okay, this is where we might have been in 2010, but this is where we are today in 2015.
I remember someone told me this, and that's true, that one in the VA hospital, I hope I pronounced this drug correctly, OxyContin?
OxyContin, yes.
Right. They used to give it to you to take home. They'd give you like 30 tabs. They don't do that anymore in the VA. You need the OxyContin, you go there and you take it, because what they were doing with it was not using it, they were selling it.
One of the things that I've seen both personally with people that unfortunately I know and other people that I've seen as patients, people get addicted with oxycodone, then OxyContin,
That's the word I couldn't think.
and then heroin. And then they end up having abscesses if the overdose doesn't kill them, or for that matter, they end up having vegetation to their valves. Basically, their heart valves get infected. And there's so many different things that can happen because people don't use clean.
I remember, George, back in the 70s, I believe it was, LSD. People would take that drug and they would think they could fly off the roof, and a lot of people were getting killed just jumping. I don't know if you remember those days.
I remember reading about them. I was a little bit young for that time, but I would say that, and as well as angel dust and PCP and things of that nature, those mind-altering drugs, they do so much to a person's, physical state as well as their mental state. So yeah, I understand.
You may have been young, but I'm an antique now.
You're like a fine bottle of wine. You only get better with age, my friend.
I hope you're right. By the way, what are your? I know you're running for Councillor-at-large. What are your future plans? Let's say you got into the city as a Councillor-at-large. What would you like to see?
Well, personally, I would like to see Wonderland Dog Track turned into a Stations Landing. For me, the issue of having the Wonderland Dog Track right now as a parking lot, that's a beautiful piece of property that abuts both the MBTA as well as the commuter rail that really is next to the beach. I mean, that is a perfect spot for a mixed-use facility in which both residential, one bedroom, senior, and mixed use could go. I'd like to see biotechnology and other types of light industry or development at Suffolk Downs, to be quite honest with you.
I'm just ashamed that we lost Suffolk Downs, but I heard on the news today, this morning as I was coming in here, that Mr. Steve Crosby was not exactly non-biased, if I can use that word.
They could say that about Steve Crosby because he has a relationship with the guy in Everett. He had a relationship with Joe O'Donnell, who owned, I believe Joe O'Donnell, someone at Suffolk or what have you. At the end of the day, I'm not going to rely on the courts to. Sure, I'm not going to rely on the courts to settle their differences. My job as a city council would be to try to bring incentives for companies to come to the city of Revere and actually, lower the tax rate for the people that live here.
What businesses would you like to bring in if you could? If you could bring in businesses into the city of Revere, beside what we have now, what would you like to bring in?
Wow, that's quite frankly, it's an easy answer. I would love to bring a company like Novartis or some type of drug research where these companies actually, they train our children. They would provide education dollars for them to go to college. They would have a lifelong job at Novartis. It wouldn't just be solely, a chemistry type of degree. People could get jobs there as carpenters, electricians, or for that matter, even janitorial staff. Everybody would have their place, but more importantly, it would uplift the community and give them the ability to go beyond, what we have here presently.
When I was a young man, a high school diploma went very far. If you didn't finish high school, you had a mediocre job. If you did finish high school, you got a good job. Today, even a bachelor's degree isn't much of an education. Now they want you to have a master's degree in a lot of places.
Like I had said to you earlier in our conversation, So some of the things that I have done as a nurse, I've been a charge nurse, I've been an assistant nurse manager, I've managed a floor in which I've had 20 patients and 100 staff and a budget of well over $20 million just to deal with
I'll talk to you after the show about some money.
of that nature. But I like being a staff nurse. I like being in contact with the patients. All my life I've been working. I help put my brothers through school. So part of me is I've gotten education, but I'm 4 classes short of getting my bachelor's degree because all my life I've been working. And what I've been doing is putting off the inevitable.
I have to tell you, if it wasn't for the GI Bill, I wouldn't have had a degree at all. I'll be honest with you. So the Army did a good, me going into the Army, but the Army repaid me tenfold.
Now, I need to ask you this because you're here asking me questions. And,
Go ahead, you can ask me anything.
And,
don't get me arrested, though.
I promise you I won't, and if I do, I'll bail you out. I found it unique. I didn't realize that you spoke German. Probably because I never had asked, and it was kind of fun speaking to you in German.
Yeah.
I think you were pretty surprised that I spoke to you in German as
Right.
well.
I got to tell you something. It's tough when you have no one to talk to. And what I usually do, I know you're going to laugh at this, is I play a lot of German music.
Sure.
The polkas, the Germans, and then I understand them, but they have different accents. Like in Bavaria, they have a different dialect than they have in
Austrian.
Leipzig or in Austria, right? So,
Or even in Czechoslovakia, or Czech Republic, shall I say.
yeah, the Sudetenland, even, I remember talking to them, it was a completely different accent, like the South in America and the North up here.
To get back to the languages, the funny part is walking the city of Revere as a candidate, we had spoke really about how hard it is to, just practice the language. I find I'm able to practice my Arabic, my Spanish, and
Right.
it's a great thing. The city's changed.
You know what I would have liked to see? They started out when I was a young man, but it never got into fruition. They wanted to make a language called Esperanto, which would have been a universal language that everybody in the world could speak Esperanto, but you could speak your own language,
Sure.
English, German, Russian, whatever. And it just never followed through. But eventually it's going to have to come someplace that, especially, I go into places in the stores right here, George, and I'm speaking, my English isn't great, but when I speak to them, they don't understand the word I say.
For me, it comes down to a very simple thing. If you come to America, you should strive to not only adopt our ways,
Definitely.
but also to learn our language. It's the only way to succeed. And I can tell you, I've met many immigrants here that, frankly, have succeeded. There was a family down on Rumney Road. The house was being used by drug dealers. It was dilapidated. And there's a gentleman that owns the property now. His name's Manny. And he's from a Spanish-speaking country. I think it was Guatemala. And this guy took so much pride in his house. I mean, the lawn was manicured, and he is the epitome of what an immigrant is. He spoke English, he had a job, he was educating himself, and he had a beautiful family. He is, the epitome of what an American dream should be for somebody, as it was for my grandfather or my great-grandfather. And that's part of what I'd like to see here in Revere, is people achieving their dreams.
A lot of the people, but when you come over here, and I notice even my parents and come over here, the very first generation usually bunch into one group together. I mean, they try, like Little Italy, Germany, like the Germans in Yorkville and New York, when they first came, they all lived in one area. The Italians all lived in one area. The Hebrews all in one area. The Spanish are all in one area. The Arabic.
Well, like here in Revere, Shirley Avenue, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but then the second generation, which is like me, they branch out, they become really Americanized. So the first ones that come here usually stick to the old traditions. They do.
Yeah, they take comfort in what they know.
Right.
And I mean, that's human nature. I mean, I'm going to Spain, Portugal, and Italy on June 18th with my ex-wife and 2 children. And when you go to, and I've been to Spain, I don't know how many times, but when you go there, there's an expat community, and they live in a certain area. There's no difference there. It's just human nature.
Right. When I lived in New York, we had a little area, Little Italy, which was on the east side, because we lived predominantly in an Italian neighborhood. When you went down...
Where were you from in New York?
I'm originally from Brooklyn now. I mean,
Okay, sure, down by
but I was
Bergen.
born and raised in New York. That's where my roots were. Yep. Then after I left Brooklyn, I immigrated to the United States.
That's
No,
pretty good.
People always tell me you come from a foreign country when you mention Brooklyn. Because we do speak funny, like First Avenue, 33rd Street, the Cave, the coffee, and all that
Well,
jazz.
they say that people from Revere speak different too.
Yep, they speak with an accent here.
Hey,
They don't speak like I say, first, second, or third. You know?
well, this is probably true.
George, we got about 2.5 minutes. Take a minute and a half and wrap it up for us, would you? Whatever you like to talk about. Let it go. Let it go.
Well, I'm just thankful that you had me here.
Hey, it was a pleasure and an honor. I haven't seen you for such a long time.
This is true. This is true. But, you know, I just hope that everybody takes a moment to hug their children, look out for their neighbor, and make sure you spend time with your family. It's the most important thing. I just really appreciate being here, but more importantly, I appreciate being in the city so I can be where my children are, where we're raising my children. It's the most important thing to me.
George, I want to say thank you for being a real veteran of the community. And I mean that sincerely.
Thank you very much.
And God bless you and take care of you, because we need people like you to take care of people like me. We really do.
One hand washes the other.
Right. So I want to thank you. God bless you again. God bless the city of Revere, our troops, and our great country, the United States of America. And I should say the greatest country, the United States of America. Thank you, folks. Till the next time, we hope to see you again with a great guest like Mr. George Rotondo. Good luck to you, George.
Thank you, Morris.